My name is Emily Parker, and what I'm about to share with you is something I never imagined experiencing. On the 3rd of December, 2023, my life changed forever in ways I can barely put into words. That morning, I set out early, the air crisp with winter frost, on my way to one of the most joyous occasions of my life, my grandson's baptism. As I drove, the morning sunlight filtered through the trees, and my heart was full of gratitude. I remember silently praying, thanking God for my grandson's decision to dedicate his life to Christ. The roads were slick with ice, but I felt confident, having driven this route so many times before. It felt like an ordinary day until it wasn't. One moment I was humming a hymn under my breath, and the next my car skidded uncontrollably on a patch of black ice. My grip tightened on the wheel as a large truck veered into my lane. I swerved instinctively, but the wheels lost traction, and time seemed to slow. The last thing I heard was the deafening screech of tires and the shattering of glass. Then, silence. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my car. I wasn't even in my body. Instead, I found myself in a place unlike anything I had ever seen. I was surrounded by light, not the harsh, blinding kind, but a warm, enveloping glow that felt alive. The peace that filled me was indescribable. The fear, the pain, the confusion, all of it melted away, replaced by a sense of calm so profound it felt otherworldly. It was then that I saw him. Jesus stood before me, his presence so powerful yet gentle, so majestic yet humble. He didn't look like the images in church paintings or sculptures. There was something infinitely more real about him. His eyes, filled with love and understanding, met mine, and when he spoke my name, Emily, it resonated through every fibre of my being. I felt truly known, as if every moment of my life had led to this one. "My child," he said, his voice carrying both authority and tenderness, "you have been brought here for a purpose. What you are about to see must be shared with those who have ears to hear. The time is short, and my people must be prepared." As he spoke, the luminous space around us began to shift. The light stretched and swirled, transforming into what appeared to be a vast panorama of the earth. Yet it was as though I could see events unfolding across time and space all at once. My heart pounded with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "Watch carefully," Jesus said. His words carried weight, and I knew my journey had only just begun. The panorama before me unfolded with a vividness that defied explanation. It was as if I were both a spectator and a participant, able to see not only the events, but also their deeper meaning. Jesus stood beside me, his presence steady, his gaze unwavering. What I saw first appeared beautiful, almost too beautiful. The earth seemed to be entering a new age, one marked by global unity and cooperation. Leaders from every nation gathered in grand ceremonies, signing treaties and declaring an end to war, poverty, and suffering. The air was filled with jubilation, people celebrating what they called the new era. Technological advancements were unveiled innovations that promised solutions to humanity's most enduring problems. New energy sources, medical breakthroughs, and systems of communication that connected the world like never before. It was a dazzling display of progress, and for a moment I found myself captivated. "Emily," Jesus said, drawing my attention back to him. His voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of urgency. "This is how it begins, not with chaos, but with a counterfeit light." The words hit me like a jolt. I turned my gaze back to the vision, and the illusion began to unravel. What had appeared as peace now seemed hollow, like a finely crafted mask, concealing something far darker. The harmony was superficial, the joy fragile. Beneath the surface, I saw cracks forming subtle but undeniable. I saw how the promises of global prosperity came with conditions. Slowly, systems were implemented that demanded conformity. People were encouraged to trust in this new order completely, to surrender control over their personal lives for the greater good. New technologies, which initially seemed like blessings, began to take on a sinister tone. Microchips implanted in the skin became commonplace, marketed as tools of convenience. No need for cash or cards anymore, I heard one world leader proclaim. With this innovation, you can access your finances, your identification, your health records all in the palm of your hand. At first, the people celebrated, grateful for the convenience and security. But then I saw how these systems grew increasingly invasive. Surveillance became all-encompassing. Every purchase, every movement, every word was tracked. The line between freedom and control blurred until it vanished altogether. "This is the great deception," Jesus said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "It begins with promises of peace and prosperity, but it will lead to bondage." As I continued to watch, I saw how this false peace was enforced. Those who questioned the system were silenced, their dissent labelled as dangerous or even treasonous. Communities were divided, some embracing the new era wholeheartedly, others resisting quietly. The resistance, however, came at a cost. Those who refused to participate were ostracized, stripped of their rights, and left to fend for themselves. Tears welled in my eyes as I turned to Jesus. "Why can't they see it?" I asked. "It seems so obvious." "Because," he replied, "the enemy knows how to disguise darkness as light. My people must stay vigilant and rooted in the truth. Tell them, Emily, warn them." The vision shifted once more, and I found myself looking at a world profoundly changed. What had started as a system of convenience and unity had evolved into something far more sinister. Jesus stood beside me, his presence steady, though I could feel the weight of his sorrow. I saw people lining up, their faces calm yet strangely vacant. They were willingly receiving a mark small, unobtrusive, but unmistakably significant. Some bore it on their foreheads, others on their hands. It was presented as a necessity, a simple way to access goods, services, and even healthcare. Without it, they couldn't buy food, pay bills, or even enter public spaces. It seemed so practical, so inevitable. Yet Jesus' words echoed in my heart, chilling me to my core. This is not just a mark, it is a declaration of allegiance. He explained to me that this mark wasn't merely a technological advancement, it was spiritual. Accepting it meant aligning oneself with the world's system, which was ultimately under the control of darkness. It was a final choice, a deliberate turning away from God. I watched as families were torn apart by this decision. In one scene, a mother pleaded with her son not to take the mark, her voice trembling with desperation. "We'll find another way," she begged. But the boy, hungry and afraid, shook his head. "If I don't, I'll lose everything," he whispered, before stepping into the line. Another vision showed a husband and wife standing in their home, the tension palpable. "We can't survive without it," the man argued, holding out his hand. His wife clung to her Bible, tears streaming down her face. "We have to trust God," she replied, but her words seemed to fall on deaf ears as he turned away. The scenes blurred together, families fractured. Friends turned against one another, communities divided. Those who refused the mark were immediately ostracized. I saw them being denied access to basic necessities, their accounts frozen, their homes seized. They became outcasts, forced to live on the fringes of society. Yet, despite the hardship, I saw something extraordinary among them: faith. These outcasts formed small, hidden communities, bound together not by the world system, but by their trust in God. I watched as they shared what little they had, their prayers lifting like incense to the heavens. Where there should have been despair, there was hope. Where there should have been scarcity, there was provision. Jesus pointed to them and said, "My people will not be forsaken." I saw food multiplying in ways that defied explanation. A loaf of bread stretched to feed an entire group. Water sprang up in places where there was none. These miracles weren't grand or showy. They were quiet acts of mercy, sustaining the faithful day by day. Their faith became their currency, their trust in God their lifeline. As the vision faded, I turned to Jesus, my heart aching for those who suffered. "Tell them, Emily," he said, his voice firm yet filled with compassion. "Warn them, but also remind them, my grace will be sufficient." As the vision shifted again, I found myself in a forest. It was quiet, save for the faint sound of voices carried on the wind. I moved toward them and discovered a small group of people huddled together. They were weary, their clothes worn and faces lined with hardship, yet their eyes glimmered with a quiet resolve. These were the ones who had refused the mark, those who had chosen faith over fear. "They have made their stand," Jesus said, his voice filled with both pride and sorrow. "And though the world has cast them out, I will not abandon them." I watched as this small community shared a meager, simple loaf of bread and a few vegetables. Before eating, they bowed their heads in prayer, their voices united in gratitude. The prayer was not for deliverance from their struggles, but for the strength to endure and remain faithful. It was a powerful display of trust in God's provision. Jesus turned to me and said, "My people will learn to depend on me like never before. Their faith will become their greatest weapon, their unity their shield." In these hidden communities, I saw miracles unfold. Food seemed to stretch impossibly far, water appeared where there was none, and the sick were healed through prayer. These were not dramatic, spectacle-like events, but quiet acts of divine provision, enough to sustain them for another day. Despite their circumstances, there was joy in their gatherings, a joy that defied the darkness pressing in around them. I saw children playing, their laughter filling the air, and elders sharing stories of God's faithfulness with the younger generation. They worshipped in secret, their songs barely above a whisper, yet the power in their praises was palpable. It was as if their worship created a protective barrier, a shield of light that the enemy could not penetrate. Jesus then showed me how these communities operated. They moved with caution, communicating through subtle signs and symbols, much like the early church. Their trust in one another was unshakable, forged through shared faith and sacrifice. Denominational boundaries had ceased to matter. What united them was their belief in Christ and their refusal to compromise. But it wasn't without risk. Jesus warned me of infiltrators, those who would pretend to share their faith only to betray them to the authorities. "My people must be wise as serpents and innocent as doves," he said. "I will give them discernment to know whom they can trust." I saw acts of incredible courage, and women risking their lives to smuggle food or shelter to others, knowing the cost if they were caught. Their love for one another was fierce, their commitment unwavering. These small, defiant acts of faith became beacons of hope, testifying to a power far greater than the forces of darkness. As the vision faded, Jesus turned to me. "The enemy's greatest weapon is fear," he said. "But my people must remember, my perfect love casts out all fear. Tell them to stand firm, for I am with them." The vision shifted once more, and I was enveloped in a scene so radiant that it took my breath away. The darkness and struggles I had witnessed faded like a shadow fleeing from the dawn. Before me, I saw the culmination of everything Jesus had shown me, a glorious victory that surpassed all human understanding. I stood at the edge of a great multitude, countless in number. They were dressed in white, their faces glowing with joy and peace. These were the faithful, those who had endured the trials and refused to compromise. They were gathered together in a place of unimaginable beauty, a landscape more vibrant and alive than anything on earth. Streams of crystal clear water flowed through lush fields, and the air was filled with the sound of songs of triumph and adoration for the King who had brought them home. At the center of it all was Jesus, his presence brighter than the sun. He welcomed them with open arms, his face radiant with love. "Well done, good and faithful servants," he said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "You have endured, and now you will share in my glory." Tears filled my eyes as I watched the joy on their faces. The suffering they had endured, the hunger, the persecution, the isolation was gone, replaced by an eternal peace. They knelt before him, casting their crowns at his feet, their voices lifted in praise. "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain." Jesus turned to me then, his gaze filled with emotion. "This is what awaits those who remain faithful." He said, "Tell them, Emily, tell them that no trial, no suffering, no sacrifice is in vain. The glory that awaits them is beyond anything they can imagine." As the vision continued, I saw the earth renewed, free from the corruption and pain that had plagued it for so long. The systems of oppression and darkness that had seemed so powerful were no more. They had crumbled under the weight of the King's return. Jesus showed me families reunited, communities restored, and a world made whole. But he also gave me a warning. "The time of trial will be difficult," he said. "Many will fall away, swayed by fear or deception. But those who cling to me will find the strength to endure. My grace will be sufficient for every trial they face." The vision began to fade, and I felt myself being drawn back to my body. But before I left, Jesus spoke one final message. "Tell them that I am coming soon. Let them prepare their hearts now. Teach them to stand firm, to trust in me above all else, and remind them I am with them always, even to the end of the age." When I opened my eyes, I was back in the hospital, the beeping of monitors grounding me in reality. But the vision remained vivid in my mind, every detail etched into my soul. I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. Jesus had entrusted me with this message for you, for all of us. And so I tell you, the time is short, but his promises are eternal. Let us prepare, not with fear, but with faith and hope. The victory is already won.